The new world government, which is trying to keep citizens of all countries under control, is supposedly being created in the West. This is one of the common conspiracy theories used by Russian propagandists. According to experts, it is aimed at smearing the states that oppose Russian colonial policy, as well as presenting them as aggressors, trying to reduce the role of Russia.
Це типова така теорія.
This is such a typical theory of a fortress under siege in order to mobilize ordinary Russians around their government and show that Russia is allegedly surrounded by enemy countries. As if we have no way out. In order to survive, we must mobilize against the West and rally around the Putin regime. This theory helps explain to the Russians why sanctions are applied to them, why they are perceived as aggressors on all international platforms, and why they cannot travel to Europe.
Здесь, конечно же, стоит отметить.
Here, of course, is worth noting the use of certain personalities, such as Soros and the many legends that are associated with Biden. The idea of global evil, which supposedly represents the West, extends to other versions. According to experts, in order to explain to the population how the West is trying to control the world, Russia came up with a theory about allegedly creating biological weapons and special laboratories in Ukraine. According to their version, experiments are being carried out and strains that affect the Russians at the genetic level are being developed there. In recent weeks, even monkeypox has been mentioned for this purpose.
Цель всего этого исключительно.
The purpose of all this is the globalization of the conflict, globalization of the confrontation with Russia, and justification of its aggressive actions against Ukraine. In fact, there were no such laboratories in Ukraine. The people who lived at these addresses, the people who came across this, always said that these were pure fakes.
Another conspiracy theory says that the Germans allegedly collect the blood of the Slavic ethnic group and that Ukraine transfers it to biological labs located in Germany. Gennady Gatilov, permanent representative of Russia to the UN office and other international organizations in Geneva, was the first to announce this.
And the alleged purpose of research in this program in Eastern Europe was to study the potential of deadly diseases, such as Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. It is clear that no one in their right mind and sober memory will remember this and will not pronounce it on the first try, but this is done on purpose.
Such techniques are used to give various throw-ins an aura of mystery, then the population has less doubts. Experts emphasize when people are bombarded with various illogical and absurd messages, they fall more easily into the trap of propaganda under the influence of the information barrage.
Люди действительно под влиянием.
Under the influence of such propaganda ideas, people really stop believing everything, themselves, their neighbor, their government. And of course, there is apathy, lack of desire to fight, lack of desire to resist, which is very important for the Russian side today. Indeed, our desire to fight to the end is a huge obstacle for them. In the last week, in the context of an international campaign to recognize Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism, various media began to promote a mirror narrative that Ukraine allegedly strikes at civilian infrastructure and terrorizes the population. Such reports began to appear more often after the mass murder of prisoners of war by Russians in Olenivka, analysts say. Russian propaganda is also trying to attribute to Ukraine the shelling of Donetsk and Makiivka, supposedly with missiles prohibited by the Geneva Convention.
All this is done with one goal, to throw in as many versions as possible, which are sometimes worse and uglier than the other, in order to hide the truth and the reason for certain events in these versions.
According to experts, in order to counteract the spread of such disinformation, it is necessary to create various notification systems, popularize truthful resources, especially in the temporarily occupied territories, and involve journalists from different countries as well as volunteers in covering real events as much as possible. Reported by Marina Stepanenko, Natalia Voloshina, UATV News.